All right, welcome. Today, Gabby and I are going to share with you how to have an abundant new year, because let's face it, after 2020, it would be really great to make 2021 epic. So we're going to share with you a totally different way to look at setting New Year's resolutions. Now, not that setting weight loss goals or create more money is bad. That's absolutely part of the picture, but we're going to present today how you can come around it full circle and look at it from a different angle and then kind of rebuild. It's almost like you're taking a Lego set and we're like, all right, we're used to building it according to the directions, and this is how we build out the Lego Star Wars ship. But we're going to just disassemble it, and we're going to create something that like is intuitive, is like absolutely the ship that we want. We don't have to always make the Millennium Falcon. Okay, that was a bad analogy, but you get the point. We really are at this point of two new realities. And just me saying that right now, you might not be on the same page as us in like knowing that there is this agenda that's scripted out for how most people in the world were conditioned to live. And us, defy the norm, we've broken those. And in breaking them, we broke them before we even realized that we were tied to them necessarily. It was totally intuitive, just went with our gut. And this created all these amazing opportunities to rethink things. And it really, I'm so appreciative because it gave us the tools to get through this year and really thrive. And it, even more so, it attracted all these really incredible people and energies to us because we had already built this skill set out. Now if you're starting today and you're like, Robin, Gabby, I don't know what you're even talking about. There's two realities. What do you mean? I go to the grocery store, people are standing in line on dots. Like, isn't that everyone's reality? Like, well, no, yes and no. It might be all you see, but it's not everyone's reality. So we are going to rebuild that Lego set, give you a new framework to work with. The big thing is that when we talk about goals, like I said, we think of them as tangible, like, okay, my goal for next year might be I'm going to lose weight. In fact, actually, I grabbed out of my file cabinet. I had this like detailed goal sheet for.
So this was her vision board, and most people make vision boards and like to be really creative and just give you inspiration, but no, she wanted to make it perfectly.
It was super systematic. Like it was. And so let's just give you a few points of reference to see how really crazy I am. When we did our vision board last New Year's Eve, we skipped parties and we said, you know what, let's just stay back in our RV, just our family, and let's make vision boards. And it was super fun. And like she said, most of the kids did it really creatively and with glitter, and Victor's was like a comic book and random, and mine was very systematic, but it was because I knew there were certain goals I laid out exactly where I wanted to travel to each month. That didn't all go down exactly how I wanted, but some of it did. I wrote down how I wanted to see my relationship goals with our business, goals for myself personally. Then I broke them down into like, what of those things am I going to do daily? What are the things I'm going to do once a week? I had goals for Jiraiya and Tati with school because I homeschool them and I have all this pressure on myself to like, oh, they're not learning enough. And then I set another goal of not to drink. Well, Gabby's going to get back to this later, but some of my goals on here totally were out of my control. I couldn't travel to Switzerland because of lockdowns and stuff, but some of them were really successful. My relationship, I feel like that goal did great because it was based on what we're going to share with you in a second. Some of my goals for our business, not so successful because I built them around the wrong markers, the wrong intention. The drinking one definitely was set with the wrong intention in mind. And so we're going to get to like, how do you set the right goals is if you're setting them from the right intention. The other thing is that we took everything we learned, because I sat down with the kids this morning. I said, you guys, 2020, would you say it's a success or not? And
yeah, I think that's initially what prompted this webinar, because it was kind of driving me crazy recently that most of the people online on social media right now are just talking about how they can't wait for 2020 to be over. But as much as 2020 has been a really hard year for all of us, 2020 is not a bad year, and bad and good is probably not a good way to look at our years, you know? And so the question really is, what do you define a good year as, like you said? And personally, even though 2020 has been a really hard year for me, I think 2020 was a really good year. And the reason for that is because good to me is because I value growth. And 2020 has forced me to grow more than any year before that. So that's why I would say 2020 is a good year.
Absolutely. Isabel was one of the, I'll give you a hint about what we're going to talk about today. Isabel was one of the most successful with hers because her work, she made her vision board or her resolutions built around adjectives. She wanted connection, expression. And so how she achieved those were great. She could have said, I want to offer a course and have 20 students signed up. And maybe she would have got 20, maybe she would have got 12. I mean, she had a course and she got 12. But if she had sent it to a number, then some people would say, well, that's good. You got to focus on that. It's a goal and that it's measurable. But I don't know if it would have brought her as much happiness. She looked at it that, well, I did what I set out to achieve. I connected with people. I expressed myself. Those things make it so that it becomes self-perpetuating. And then it's a totally different feeling inside. And then you're not sitting back like, oh, I only weigh 150 this week instead of 148. And we can start to, or I only made, I mean, this was my big one. I should say, Gabby and I both look at, like, we set money goals for nomads and we fell a little short of that. And some of it might've been out of our control because of shutdowns. People didn't travel as much. Maybe some of it was that we had to set the goal for, in the end, we realized we wanted to impact more lives. We wanted to create more community.
Yeah, and the thing that's really important and why Isabel was so successful in setting emotional goals is because I like to think of it from the perspective of Mark Manson's second book that he came out with. He talks all about how we think that our rational mind is in control of our lives, but the truth is that it isn't. Our emotions are the driver and logic just tries to reason with it. So if we have a logical goal, like I want this number, and we don't have an emotion tied to it, usually we're not motivated that we ever really want to achieve it. So that's why having something like expression is so good, because that's an emotion. The emotion is the driver. And if you can get the driver to keep going, then you'll stick with your goals. You're more likely to stick with your goals.
Yes. And some of the things, like, we realized, so growth was a huge part for us, for all of our family. I mean, growth ends up being really what we're searching for. Probably most people, I think if you don't have a growth mindset, you wouldn't be listening to this anyways. Most people that are very blocked off aren't seeking out these type of things. Or if you're closed-minded, you're not searching out for things. But you know, if you have a growth mindset, that as soon as you have the intention to grow, everything just keeps falling in your lap. Connection is really, we're going to share our 5 pillars that we came up with at the end of this year with everything we've learned. But, you know, at the highest part, the very tip top is connection. And so for me, like, my ability to not drink ever is that, well, I really thrive on that feeling of connecting with random people at a brewery. In fact, some of you are even listening right now, because I thrive on that stuff. I love that feeling of connecting with a total stranger. And it just happens that could I do that in another situation? Maybe. We'll see this year. I don't know. It makes it hard with things when we're impulsive and there's like nothing available to go to. So Gabby's you were saying how people like define success, you know, like, I think it's hard because a lot of people, if we start with what is successful, that's a loaded question.
Absolutely. You know? And okay, to start with, we have bad definition of success, right? But on top of that, even with this poor representation of what we consider success, which is really not the full embodiment of success, we still, only 12% of people every year would say that they are successful in achieving their New Year's resolutions. And that's too bad, because New Year's resolutions are probably the most common form of goal setting. Really, we should be setting goals more than once a year. But I'd say the most the most that we can get our whole society to make a change at the same time is during New Year's, right?
Yes, it's definitely, there's something ingrained in the conditioning that on New Year's, everybody at least thinks about it for a second.
Absolutely.
That's usually why they stop by February 1st, is because, okay, I thought about it, but now I'm distracted. But it seems like, I mean, we feel like success tends to be like what dress size or pant size you wear, tied up in that, tied up in how much money you make, tied up in in a lot of just health. But I honestly feel like people set the goal of like, I want to be healthy. I mean, Victor has been a personal trainer for 30 years. I work right side by side with him on the backside, like helping him with, nurture people through like, okay, well, this is the next step that they need. And the problem is like, we get so caught up in that appearance part or not being tired part that they never propel past. Like, we're going to share with you, we've got these 5 pillars. Gabby and I have these 5 pillars that we strongly believe in. But pillar 1 is health. And of that pillar 1 of health, there's 5 more. And it's really amazing how many people stop at, I need to get to the gym and eat better. You are putting up the biggest roadblock for yourself if you're thinking that if that's your success. That's never going to be success, because you know that. It's just like somebody who's like, my success is to have this really high paying job. And yet you see stories all the time. Yeah, but I left my high paying job because it just wasn't making me happy. We have to look at the whole dynamic. So in a way, I'm telling you, there's 10 things we need to look at when we're setting our New Year's resolutions. We're really going to focus on one of those today. But what do you think they're like? Why do people have trouble just with those first basic ones?
So I've come up with three of the most common struggles of why people can't achieve their resolutions. Really comes down to 3 things. And I know this from personal experience and with experiences with people who are close to me and other people I know. And the first one of those things is overwhelm. And so if you're here, this is more than likely probably yours, because you are determined. You want to achieve something new. You want change. And I'm guessing if you're here, you probably already have this desire that every time New Year's comes around, you make resolutions. And so the first one is overwhelm. And overwhelm often happens because you set too big of goals, or you start and you don't know how to break your goals down into tasks. This is absolutely both of us. And so what happens personally that I've noticed is that you've got two types of this, right? One is that you don't know what the tasks are, but the other one is that your goals are too massive for this small scale of 1 year. And the problem with this one is that a lot of times your overwhelm is coming from you're too tied up in the result. And this requires us to step back and reflect on, okay, why do I believe that I need to achieve this result so bad? Why am I putting so much pressure on the result? What is the value I'm chasing instead? What is the emotion I'm chasing instead? And when we do this, it gives us, like I said, to start with, if we tie it to an emotion, it gives us the motivation we need to keep it working towards it consistently, because you start getting that feeling of emotion more consistently and regularly. You're like, wow, this is pretty good. I think I'll just keep doing this, even if I don't achieve that result. And another thing is that result is usually tied to the chakras, which we're going to talk about later. And when we want a result really bad, it's usually because we're compensating for a blocked chakra. And we'll go over this later, but each chakra, if you don't know, rules a different aspect of our lives. So a lot of times these goals are to overcompensate for our body chakras, like our groundedness and our root chakra, which would have to do with any money goals that we want. Usually has to do with our root chakra, or our sacral chakra is our self-worth. So if we're trying to get validated for a certain accomplishment, then that's because of that, and so on and so on. But the point is that we get overwhelmed because there's not an emotion tied to it, and because we're putting too much pressure on the result.
So to reiterate that a little bit, we did a friend of ours last January 1st did a yoga / what would you call it, her course, the thing that we did?
I don't know. It was almost like an activation.
Yeah, kind of like an activation. It was, we would do a yoga pose, and she would talk about, she'd give us a thought. It would be
like if we did this right now, but then also guided you into yoga in between.
And then had you journal right after. And I found my note before we did this, and I thought it was funny because 3 things was like what worked, what rocked, and what sucked. And a little insight into like what worked for me was like our lifestyle. I absolutely loved our RV lifestyle. I loved hitting, like traveling on a road trip. I loved going. I didn't love like just sitting in an RV park in San Diego, but that part was part of the picture. I loved the surfing. I loved the people. I had a great community there. And then of course, with COVID, it all got disrupted. What rocked was like the bigger adventures I did, but I still have always this overwhelming. What sucked is that it was always still a separation. Victor did his thing, I did mine, and it wasn't like so much our things, but as more that, Victor needed his job to feel validated, like she was talking about. It was definitely a root chakra issue. And then here I am overcompensating with my solar plexus that always has to do. And in moving here to Polson, that like shifted a ton for us. And because Victor, we have a ton of land around us, he was able to really heal his root chakra by just extracting himself from the busyness of his job. He felt safe, he could reiterate. I stopped overacting, having an overactive solar plexus because I couldn't go do things. And I woke up this morning and I looked at Victor and he hugged me and I'm like, wow, I'm just thinking in my head, like, this isn't like January 1st, I would have been like, oh, this would suck. I rocked. What rocked was my doing, my solar plexus. But at the same time, what sucked was that Victor's never there with me. And I wake up this morning and think, oh, wow, I learned so much in like, just using those chakras as that framework of like, wow, he allowed his sacral or root chakra to kind of heal. And it allowed my solar plexus in a way to heal too, to be like, I don't always have to go do and prove and be intense. I can just rest a little bit. It's okay.
Right. So I'm going to jump down to the third one. The third reason that people don't achieve their goals is because of blocked energetic systems. And so your chakras, as a brief overview, your chakras, there are 7 primary chakras. You've got tons of chakras in your body, but the 7 primary ones run from your roots to your crown. So you've got your crown, your third eye, your throat chakra, your heart chakra, your solar plexus, your sacral chakra, and your root chakra, and they lie along your spine. And each chakra was a different aspect of your lives. Well, chakras may initially sound like woo-woo to you, but the truth is that there are technologies now that can prove that their chakras exist. And technologies are like the IAV system and the ECG system. So we know that these chakras exist, and they're often tied to an emotional response. And a lot of times what happens is that if you have a trauma, or even just as you grow up and you have a behavioral response to a situation, this causes you to have a tendency to have energetic blocks in your chakras.
And I was reading an email today, like it even could be in your birthing experience. When you were born, if you had a traumatic birth, I mean, I think of my 5 kids. Well, it doesn't explain Tati so well, does it? She had an easy birth, but I think of Danny. Danny, like he had a very stressful birth, and the kid is so anxious, and healing his root chakra is taking so much effort.
Right. So if you have like a money block, like I said, that could be tied to your root chakra. And what happens is that we're going to talk about this later in how to actually overcome this and make your New Year's resolutions actually happen. But the law of attraction states that energy is either expanding or retracting. And so if your energetic systems are blocked, such as your root chakra, and it's not expanding, then it's in retraction, which means you can't magnetize the abundance of what your root chakra really needs.
Absolutely. Again, going back to and then she's probably going to say like, we need a balance. When somebody has, say, a wrist injury, and they come in and talk to Victor, we never look at the wrist. You look at the elbow and the shoulder. Same thing. Ankle injury. You don't look at the ankle. You look at the knee and the hip. It's really important with the chakras. The same thing. Like for myself, because I have this overactive solar plexus, I always have to look above and below. Like what's happening in my heart chakra that you literally can start moving that. The more I can move energy up to my heart chakra, or the more I can bring it down to my sacral chakra, then it's almost like the grip when it's overactive. The grip is so hard, so tight that it just can't hold on that tight anymore, and it has to diffuse that energy to other chakras. So it's really awesome when you can identify the one that seems to be the one right in front of your face, But then when you can step back a little bit and evaluate like, oh, well, maybe I can just nurture these other two, because sometimes it's like, imagine you're holding something so tight and I just start pulling it away from you, pull it, you're going to grip tighter at first. But instead, if I show you something to reach for instead, you might loosen that grip and start reaching for something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're working with your chakras, like for example, you're talking about if you have a sacral chakra blockage, each chakra has two aspects to it. So for the sacral chakra, you have self-worth is the emotion, but the action is creativity. So anytime you have a blockage, it's not like you can, sometimes it's easier just to look at the action instead of the core emotion, because core emotion has to do with the goal. But sometimes to trigger that emotion, to allow it to come out, because a lot of times we repress that emotion, it's easier to look at the action. Then that action can help you open that energy hub and open that emotion. And then when you can open that emotion, it can help you be more motivated to achieve that New Year's resolution consistently and regularly.
Absolutely. And one way to do that, so we want to make sure you have take homes today when you finish this. If you think of this is kind of what I do with coaching, is like walk people step by step into. So if, let's say it's a sacral blockage, and instead of me saying like, we can absolutely talk about what are you amazing at? What are your gifts? What are you, I always use badass. What are you badass at? Because that's your individuality. That's your sacral chakra. And I can say, go do something creative. Or we can look at your lifestyle in general, like redefining what your day looks like and creating space for creativity or creating a new environment for creativity. It's really hard for most people. If you're in the exact same situation as far as like where you live and who you surround yourself by, if you're in that all the time, for me to go tell you, go be creative. I know Victor works with this with his clients, and he tries to add, well, you need to be creative, but they have so many constraints because life looks the same. And, I'm hoping by the end of this, we inspire you to break down some of those walls of fear and maybe go create these experiences more. But this is why we're so adventure driven. This is why lifestyle overlaps. It's hard to connect those dots for people to be like, no, it's not about travel. It's not about necessarily the adventure. It's about the experience in life opens up actions that can unblock these chakras. Okay, so it's the things that we go do are limited by the scope of what we surround ourselves with. And in a little complicated but yet simple way, sometimes stepping outside what the structure of your life looks like right now could be the key to opening up some totally new doors.
Yeah, so the final one of the things that get in our way in achieving our resolutions is that we kind of touched on this already, but misaligned intentions and too much work. So a lot of times we plain just give up on certain things because it's too hard. We have to overcome too much fear.
Process pain,
absolutely. The thought of going from where I am at A all the way to Z is too much. So instead we need to focus on breaking down it into tasks, and tasks are not bad. Tasks are necessary, but tasks are the necessity and emotions are the motivation to get there. So when we align with our chakras, when we unblock the energy hubs, and then we break down our plan into a systematic approach, and we don't overwhelm ourselves with looking at Z, we just focus on BC ahead of us, and then we align with the intention. That's how we can overcome those blockages.
Yes. So in simple terms, combining what Gabby just said and how I was saying with sacral chakra, so maybe it's, yes, you need the task of saying, I'm going to ask somebody who I really enjoy spending time with if they'll go on a hiking trip with me next weekend. Something little like that. Like I just need to get, because something as small as I'm going to drive 3 hours, I'm going to go hike, I'm going to camp, I'm going to get a hotel, whatever it is, you have different constraints depending where you're at. But I think of myself here. We're in a lot of ways, we feel very trapped in this house. And it takes a lot of activation energy. When we're in an RV, we could just adventure, fun, people. We're at our front door all the time. We don't have that right now. And so it takes a lot more activation energy for us to say like, let's go cross country skiing glacier. I'm like, man, and we did this last week, but it did take us like, all right, we're doing it. Like no more excuses.
I gotta put skis in the car. I gotta get in the car. I gotta drive.
We drove through a snowstorm. We even got to a point we had got gas and like, we looked at each other like, should we turn around? And I'm like, no, let's go another 10 minutes. We can always turn around. We can always reverse. We can always back up. Yes, things could get worse, and of course, but you can't live that. That's the worst case scenario. Is a whole nother root chakra issue that, you know, that in itself can be something to work yourself through or walk yourself through. But we want to just so instead of your goal be maybe money or weight loss or whatever that tangible thing you're feeling, like step back and like, okay, well, what is it that I'm really like? I'm missing creativity. I don't feel creative anymore. Okay, well, how could I be creative? How could I add? Now I could in my house paint or cook more. You can, you absolutely can. The question is like, if I do those things or try those things, and I'm like, do I feel creative? Do I feel an energetic shift in my sense of self?
Definitely. Do you think I can talk about this now?
Yeah.
Or? So the final aspect of this is that now we've got the goals in mind, we've got the emotion in mind, and the action in mind. But now is the time when a lot of times we have goals. We know exactly what we need to do. We know exactly what the emotion that we're searching for is. But a lot of times, no matter how hard we push, we can't accomplish that thing. And I know this personally through, we both experienced this through our work a lot because we're super driven. We're like obsessed. We work so many hours every single day, but no matter what, we can't achieve the desired outcome the way that we want it to. And this comes down to the law of attraction. So the law of attraction is based on the idea that like attracts like. And based on what people know, that people commonly agree on in quantum physics, we are all energy. Every emotion in your body, every thought, everything that you do, say, speak, it's all creating an energetic frequency out into the world. And so what happens is when you're pushing too hard, and personally, if I like stress myself out too much in work and yet I'm trying to reach for this positive emotion, well, my negative energy, my stress and my bad energy is retracting. And so the universe isn't going to bring in this energy. And so you really have to think for a sec right now. Like, one, you can believe that this is real. This is a science that we are energy. And two is that, am I being the energetic match for the result that I want? If I want to be positive and light and joyful, and I want this self-worth or abundance, am I being abundant? Am I thinking of myself as worthy or valued or lovable? So that's what the law of attraction is based around.
I struggled with this more. I think that's why when I look at my goals from the beginning of this year to like where I'm at right now, it was hard for me because, I mean, look at like how perfect all these little boxes are. I get too logical. I get too caught up in like I need A for B and B for C, and this is the perfect way to approach this. And so one of the benefits of being up here in Polson in that we have eliminated so many other distractions, and we're, you know, if you don't know, our family comes together every day and does yoga together for an hour and meditates for 15 or 30 minutes. And I mean, we're still interacting the rest of the day, but it's different. You know, we kind of, no matter what, if anyone was fighting or if there was anger or any emotions, we kind of diffuse them and we like, this is our yoga practice. And so in doing that, myself, I've noticed so much letting go, in that this is how I think the law of attraction is actually self-perpetuating in our family. So I have this, my negative was, Victor, you never want to adventure with me. I live this amazing life and you're not here with me, but I love you. But why aren't you here with me doing these things? What's wrong with you? All the things that wives are not supposed to say, I totally say. And then he is really, really good at what he does. Amazing. But he has no like marketing and business plans. Is like, it's the worst thing to have to bring up. So when we came up here, we were forced to shift into like, okay, we've got to figure this out. Victor, you do such an amazing job. My logical brain is telling like, these are the steps you need to take. You need to do this. And then finally, I told myself November 1st, kids, do not let me micromanage your dad anymore. Took me a month to listen to my own rules. And then finally by December 1st, I felt like I was finally at a place where I was willing to let go. And we had meditated on it. It really helps that we have these crystals. I'm convinced that the crystals are what got me to let go. So I start meditating.
For hippies.
letting go. And I'm like, it's all right. It's all good. Okay. Couple things happened in there. First thing that happened was I discovered because we weren't like struggling with money, but it was with making the transition. It really cut our income by like 75% when we made this transition. So my logical brain, my overthinking brain was kind of gripping really tight on that fear of not having enough. And I discovered a stock that I had put in years ago that had enough money that I could cash out and breathe for a few months. I'm like, oh wow, that was weird. And then on top of it, I stopped micromanaging my husband, and like out of nowhere, 2 or 3 new clients appeared in his inbox. Meaning, like sometimes I'm so busy thinking, if I do this, this is how the money comes in, this is what we do. And by stepping back and just like working on what she's saying, like just changing my vibe, the things that I was forcing so much, all of a sudden just walked through my door. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Yeah. It was really a light bulb. It's like, it's one thing to know it. It's one thing to see it and be, wow, I didn't think that was possible for me.
Definitely. I like the metaphor of, to do this, you have to picture that you're holding a ball, right? And this ball is all the tasks that you need to accomplish to achieve that goal. Well, once you have to fully be able to picture it, you have to know exactly what the end result is. You have to know exactly what is inside the ball. But you can't just keep holding the ball. If you keep holding the ball, then you're not sending out into the universe. You have to throw the ball and completely and utterly let go of it and just let things happen. But you can know what the ball looks like. You still know what it looks like when you throw it, but you have to let it go.
Yeah, as opposed to the ball we don't want this ball to just be like, oh, I just want to be happy. Well, what's the feeling? I mean, obviously the feeling of happiness is happiness, but are we looking for connection, and are we looking for affirmation? Are we, what's that root desire? And so this 5-step system, we call it Humankind Project. This is for us how we would take all the different elements that make us feel happy and put them into some form of framework, to say like, okay, well, yeah, to me, if I want to go have that drink and connect with somebody, but if that's all I'm doing, I'm not going to be happy. I'm going to have a headache. And like, but for me to deny that part of myself wouldn't be good either. So we find this balance in between. So the 5 steps. Step 1 is absolutely optimizing your nutrition and movement. So instead of, if you feel like, oh, I'd like to be at a healthier weight this year, well, instead of looking at the scale, think about nutrition. Like, is your nutrition fueling your happiness? Is your nutrition fueling your goals? Can you move your bodies in ways that make you feel free and feel happy? It's not about a workout. It's about a feeling that you're trying to create. In the end, the highest part of the chakra is interconnectedness. I want to connect with other spiritual beings. I want to connect with the energy of the trees and the mountains. So if my body is not able to go experience that, then I need to optimize that by all means. Step 2 is pursuing experiences. Well, a lot of times we get trapped in this, whether it's just in a city, but sometimes a city mentality of like, okay, I go to my job, I go to the gym, go to a restaurant, maybe it doesn't happen as much anymore. I have my routine and it's comfortable and there's good parts of it, but I'm not throwing new variables. How do I know if a chakra is blocked? I think of Victor. He had the same job. He literally for 30 years almost went into the same 4 walls, worked with some of the same clients for 15, 20 years. So he wouldn't even know, even if I said, oh, your root chakra is blocked. He's like, well, what are you talking about? I don't know. This is my routine. This is what I do. And I'd always say, but you're not happy. I'm good. I'm good. But like this, we don't look deeper unless we're going and doing these experiences. So step 2 is absolutely pursuing experiences. Now, if you're already like, well, I travel, are you throwing new variables on it? And then like for Gabby and I, we said, our goal is growth. So for us, I probably think too much about my travels. I'm overthinking, like we're going to go somewhere in a week. And I'm like, am I driving to Florida? Am I driving to San Diego? Am I driving to Texas? I overthink it way too much instead of just being like, well, what's the feeling? I know what the feeling is. I want to wake up and ride a mountain bike in the sun. That's the feeling I want to create. I want to feel like that feeling when I walk out my RV and I'm like, a new trail and it's sunny. I miss the sun. And so whatever that experience is, the third is inner abundance. And that was really the framework of this webinar, is that inner abundance is being able to have free flowing energy through all those 7 chakras.
And so one thing I want to touch on while we're at that is, say you've gone through step 1 and step 2, and now you're at this phase and you're trying to manifest a new goal. It's more than just your energetic, conscious energetic system. Stress is a conscious energetic system, and you're like, oh, I'm stressed. You don't feel good. But there's also this subconscious belief system that's holding you back in your energetic system, because your subconscious has equally as much power to manifest things as your conscious brain. And just like the name suggests, your subconscious is deep down buried. And so I think a big part of this one, if you want to really work through this third step and actually make the law of attraction work, you have to be willing to look into the parts of yourself that you don't want to. And it's uncomfortable. It's hard. You have to make it a practice. That's why we have our meditation practice every single day, because this is why people say meditation is so hard. Nobody wants to sit in silence, because it's hard to dive deep into, oh, wow, I didn't realize I was thinking this. And the longer you have your meditation practice and the longer that you meditate, the more those subconscious beliefs start to come up. And then you can work through those energetic blocks that are holding you down and actually unleash them and let them come out of your root and your sacral and your solar plexus chakra.
Absolutely. So step 4 then is really self-mastery, because once I'm healthy, I'm fit, I'm experiencing life, and I have this free-flowing energy, the self-discipline comes in always checking in on that. Because the one thing we can count on is change. Whether we acknowledge it's happening or not, change is a constant. And so being able to to have that self-mastery for myself, to be able to go from this and to just rip it up and be like, yeah, my self-mastery is going to be showing up to just check in with that inner abundance, to just check in with ooh, is something in my root chakra off, or am I not being upfront with oh, maybe it is that one drink at the bar is too much. Maybe it should be served at maybe it should be a kava bar.
Personally, what I like to do is, everyone has a different tendency. Some people have a tendency to be obsessed with a to-do list task, and some people have this tendency to just fall asleep to their to-do list and they just hide away. And so I think it's really important to know what your personality type is, and I think you're going to touch on that in a sec. But we use our Enneagram types, which is a personality archetype system. And knowing that is really helpful if you don't know what your tendency is, or even if you do know what your tendency is, but you need a reminder of, oh yeah, I'm doing that thing again. That's because I'm this type. It's really helpful, because when we are that personality type, we often don't see the things that we naturally do.
Absolutely. Now I know some of you here have already done some of these courses. The framework for this part that Gabby and I talk a lot about is our Power, Passion, Productivity, which is our chakra healing course, and our Project Life course, which is more about bringing in that, what she's talking about, the personality type with the goal setting. I'm going to touch a little bit on how I connect them, because sometimes you might not look at it in this aspect. But we start with the root chakra, and we need to absolutely heal that, meaning your root chakra is your sense of safety. So any childhood trauma, and remember, it doesn't always have to be trauma. It can just be where you felt shunned, or you felt isolated, or not heard, or you heard your parents talk about money problems all the time. Wherever that is, it's important healing that. But simultaneously finding your tribe. And it's really sad to say, but being up here in Polson, we reestablished our tribe in, it's not always your familial tribe. We have our tribe through nomads, and we have our tribe through friends that we connect with, and we're separated sometimes from our family tribe, and that's okay. I think it's a big deal that we're okay with that. Wherever you're at, it's just making sure that the tribe that you identify with is supporting you. And we always tell people we're very open to open our tribe. We want our tribe to grow. We really want people to feel really comfortable around us, and finding those people that you had so vice versa, if there are people that are not making you feel good, it might be time, maybe your New Year's resolution is to redefine that tribe and to let go of some of them.
It's also important to note that, like, a lot of times you can confuse, these people support me, but maybe they're not supporting the right version of you, because a lot of us have this chameleon ability to present ourselves differently to different people. And maybe the version of ourselves that you're showing to certain people who are supporting you aren't supporting the version of you that you're trying to become.
Absolutely. And I jump from root chakra is highly connected to heart chakra. And so I always feel like the heart chakra is the portal, maybe because it's my hardest one to always keep open, but it's the portal to all of this manifestation. It's a portal to connecting, interconnectedness. And it's the portal for our root chakra, because sometimes we won't get that closure that we need. And we just have to let it go and focus inward on forgiving ourselves for whatever those flaws are, and heal that internally, because sometimes you're just not going to be able to get. I know for me, I'm never going to get forgiveness or closure from the people that maybe disrupt my root chakra the most. And at the same time, I know like the people that are around me support my root chakra. I use it as a scale. My overly logical brain looks at like, well, this is not going to happen, but I have an abundance over here. And so I can just shift to that other side. When we get to Sacral Chakra, is one of the most blocked chakras for most people. It really does come down to your sense of individuality. How my Sacral Chakra feels happy and abundant is totally different than Gabby's. And because the big reason is because we are different Enneagrams. Our core desire is different. I'm an 8. I have this core desire for more for challenge and intensity, where she has more for achievement. They work similarly. A 3 and an 8 do have a lot more overlaps, as opposed to my husband, who's a 2 and has like almost the complete opposite of me. But the point is, like, it does really help when you go to heal your sacral chakra to understand, oh, what is this core desire? Don't mistype it, because then it's hard. But if you, in our Project Life course, I have a list, like a little cheat sheet. Really ask yourself from other ways. Like, I know Victor for so long thought he was a 9.
Yeah.
Like, well, like a 2 and a 9 are similar, but how a 9.
We'll send in the email that you guys get after this workshop. We'll send a couple links with resources on a couple of common mistypings. That way you can look through.
Look at it. We're also going to send you a worksheet on like 15 questions. Whenever we make a big decision, these are the 15 questions. They're a little bit of, I pulled them out of our Project Life course, but there are a few questions that I ask when they'll help you when you're setting your New Year's resolution. And they really help you with your sacral chakra, because they start by looking at like, what are you already thriving in? What do you already love? What forget the tribe, forget what your to-do list is. Like, where does your soul thrive? If you didn't worry about judgment, any of those things, what would you do? We always call it
your sacral chakra is all about the expression of life in the joie de vivre. So anything that you just find joy in doing, that's absolutely what the sacral chakra is all about.
And your solar plexus, the 3rd chakra, is how you experience life, how you're bold or how you're brave, or what the actions that you tend to do. For me, I think it still comes down to a lot of your Myers-Briggs typing, your MBTI. So I'm a commander. I don't know. Sometimes I think we go back and forth. Architect would be an introverted version of myself, commander, extroverted.
Except every night she's like, okay, travel plans. Look at the whiteboard. Let me point my stick at the whiteboard.
And the similarities are it shifts which is your first function versus second function, but other than that, they're almost the same. Gabby's advocate, and so it comes out in our life experience. It absolutely comes out. My commander has things like, this is what we're doing. We're making a plan, and if it's the architect, it's a similar. It's just happening more internally before me presenting it. If you see me more on YouTube and on Instagram doing videos, it's because I'm finally going to come to terms with that. I am probably a commander and not an architect, and that I need to stop being in my brain and be more verbose about it, I guess. Do you feel like your life experience, your solar plexus is shown in your?
Definitely. Well, the other perspective to look at it from is, personally, I think it's good to know your Myers-Briggs. it's good to know how you, oh yeah, I do behave like that. But personally, I don't like looking at my Myers-Briggs, or I don't think it's particularly helpful for me, because I know what my growth is, but the aspects of myself that I have a natural tendency to draw towards don't help me with my growth or my purpose. So solar plexus is kind of a weird line, don't you think? Because people with overactive solar plexus chakras tend to just do, and they don't ever step back and look at, like, okay, what is my crown chakra saying? What's my third eye? What's my throat chakra and my heart saying? Instead of being obsessed with the to-do list.
Absolutely. I'm smirking to myself because I'm thinking about, yes, but if we are going to judge it from like compared to somebody else watching this or someone else in our family, she completely fulfills her MBTI in doing things.
It all depends on the person.
Yeah.
It depends on your Enneagram if you draw towards.
Yes. Yeah. And the other, that too. This is where it's so helpful because it's like a cheat sheet. If you know, say Gabby is a type 3, she likes achievement. Her solar plexus loves going out rock climbing. She creates amazing content for nomads. She's the brain, she's the doing behind so much of what we do. Now, she knows in growth that she has to be more of a type 6, which is probably has been a struggle because that's a lot of chill. That's a lot of like, it's more loyalty, trust, yeah. And so she's thinking like, oh, well, I know I just can't, I'm so good at doing, I'm so good at like looking at what the next achievement is, that, so it is helpful because I know mine too is, the overlaps are amazing. As a type 8, I'm like, gotta go do something intense today. I've got to challenge myself. And my growth is a type 2, which is Victor. So it's compassion. It's like, just, again, letting go. It's really like, hey, how can I be here for you? And how can I nurture you? And it doesn't always have to be about like the most epic adventure. And that's hard for me to let go because I think, oh, wait, nomads, we built all this stuff about epic adventure. I'm like, well, I might get rejected if all of a sudden I'm showing up about nurturing people, and that's okay.
This is, I'll give you an example of a time when I've noticed. So I'm obsessed with rock climbing, and I'm also obsessed with my job. I have 2 goals in both of those realms. Well, in my work, like we started this webinar with, we haven't quite achieved the desired outcome we want with our work. We still love our work, of course. But with rock climbing, the law of attraction comes much, much easier to me. And the reason for this is because I don't have as much of an attachment to my results. So one of my New Year's resolutions last year was I wanted to climb a certain grade. Well, this year I actually climbed 2 grades harder than that grade. And the reason for that was because at the start of the year when COVID hit, I was like, I can't worry about COVID. So I subconsciously had released the expectation of the result that I wanted. And maybe in a different year when I wasn't distracted by all the fear and of COVID and the stuff that's going on, I might have been more attached to that result. But because of that, I had released the expectation. And I also, every time I show up to rock climb, I'm always bringing the right frequency. I'm bringing the right energy, so that the law of attraction just works. You let it go, you let go of the results, and you become the magnetic match for what you want to create.
And I think that's a big reason why we did put number 2 on those 5 pillars for us as pursuing experience, because it just so happened that COVID caused us to have different experiences. Meaning, if things had been different, we would have stayed in San Diego. Gabby probably would have indoor climbed a lot. Well, when she indoor climbs, she overtrains, and then she ends up hurting herself because she pushes so hard. Because of how certain states were open, we ended up in these amazing outdoor rock climbing destinations this summer, and just the natural flow. I mean, who knows why we ended up in these great spots? I mean, maybe it's a subconscious intention. Maybe it was me commanding a plan. I don't know. But we were end up in these situations where she was just like prime, set up to like perform her best, peak performance. And it's just interesting that this is why I think experience is still such a driving force behind all this. But you can't go experience these things without having some form of self-reflection on
where to start,
or I had a couple of words written out, like what we're trying to achieve. Like, are we trying to get more connection? Are we trying to harness our intuition? Are we trying to discover our purpose? Do we want a deeper spirituality? Are we looking for more for like physical nourishment? Do we need more fun? Like, I know that's a huge one for, I love fun. And so, do we seek more knowledge? These things overlap a lot with what we're talking about as far as Enneagram and Myers-Briggs, but they also completely change when you go to write those New Year's resolutions and you're thinking of abundance. Do I want an abundance of intuition? Do I want these things to come to me? I know Victor said this over and over this last week. He's like, wow, I have so much more intuition that I never knew I had, because my life used to be all about another person. I mean, he used to be in a gym 12 hours a day, pretty much, for, it seemed like 30 years. And so what are we like, when I look for intensity, can I step back and be like, you know what? I just want to nourish my body this year. Maybe I don't need it have to be intensity. Don't quote me on that. I don't know if I'm sticking with that one, but okay. So those are your body chakras, and how understanding how Project Life, understanding like, who am I? What are my strengths? How am I wired? And how do these integrate into these chakras that I'm trying to balance? We get to the heart chakra, which is our portal to everything, really.
There's a reason it's the central chakra.
We did this heart chakra meditation the other day, and it was envisioning, she was talking about how, what she called the octagon, or the shape, hexahedral,
Yeah.
how this crystal inside your heart, and visualizing that it is truly the center of the earth, that they just, I don't know how they've proven, but the same shape crystal in the center of the earth is actually inside your own heart center.
And I actually talk about this in my Brainwave Mastery course, that the center of the heart vibrates at a 528 hertz frequency. And that's the same frequency that vibrates at the center of all things found in nature, including the sun. And when it comes to the law of attraction, you have your brainwaves, right? That's a form of energy being pulsated, but your heart actually has 60 times more amplitude to manifest than your brain waves, which is why it's so important to unblock your heart chakra, or even not have an overactive heart chakra, and like be selfless, or have selfless service to other people, and be loving toward yourself, forgive yourself, and to forgive others.
Absolutely. It's favorite chakra part. We have a good crystal. Let's link in the description.
Yes,
the heart chakra.
Rose quartz is the heart chakra crystal.
Absolutely. And then you get up to the mind ones, and these are important. I was going to add before that is, if we've overwhelmed you and given you too much things, if you just set one intention of like, I'm going to sit in for 15 minutes a day and just breathe into my heart center, just like really like focus all the energy just into your heart center, I think magic would happen. You don't need to set any other goals. Just breathe into your heart chakra and you're like, whoa, I can't believe what an abundant 2021 I had just from one thing. Throat chakra is really important. And remember, Gabby was saying with the law of attraction, we can't mentally think, I want this one thing, and then just show up with a bad attitude. So the simplest one for this one is, throat chakra is all about balancing assertion with compassion. So a lot of us, I think we have two types of people, tend to always, I shouldn't say always, tend to thinking types. If you're a Myers-Briggs thinking type, you have a tendency to be more assertive. If you're a Myers-Briggs feeling type, you probably have a tendency to be more compassionate. And so again, this is where sometimes it helps knowing it. I'm a thinking type. It helps me to be like, okay, it's good that I'm assertive, but I don't have to be so, I can add a level of compassion. I know Gabby, Victor, they're feeling types. They work a little, they're super compassionate. They have to work on being a little bit more assertive. Now, here's what happens is that usually at first, when you start using that opposite function of it, you end up doing it in a way that's like overly active or over, maybe over assertive or over compassionate. And so finding that little balance, again, self-awareness helps when you can step back and be like, oh, wait, I'm doing that thing again. Another one is sometimes throat chakra is just great to just not use so much of, like to just sit back and more.
Yeah. And so I think is it in a Coelho book where he says, it's in the Zahir in the section. I know this because this is one section of the Zahir by Paulo Coelho, where he quotes how the nomads, and I can't remember the exact quote because it's pretty long. The
Our favorite
nomads looked
quote.
at the people and said, "How are you happy staying still?" And the people in the city looked at the nomads and said, "How are you happy always being on?" Something like that. I can't quote it exactly.
The nomads would look at the people in the city and be like, how can you, I know this because this is the theme, overriding theme of my husband and my marriage. How can you be happy?
That's what I just said.
Yeah, but then the city people are like, how can you be happy with no home? That's the only part I had to add.
Okay.
No home, because Victor will always ask me like, so you don't ever want a house? No, not necessarily. Not really. A storage unit.
In that excerpt, he says, I think either before or after, he says that in order to release a blocked chakra, he doesn't say blocked chakra, but to release a blocked energy, you have to speak it. And I think for people with blocked throat chakras and blocked other chakras, speaking what you haven't said is extremely powerful in giving you back your ability to manifest things.
Yeah, and it's really, I feel very lucky because as much as I joke around about Victor and I, it's like, we've been together so long, like I feel like we're almost one human together sometimes, because I can tell him anything. And the fact that I can say anything, and sometimes it's bad because sometimes bad things come out, but also like I can share any secret, and it's nice just having somebody who you can talk that freely with. I think that's a really important thing, to find somebody. And at first, if you don't have that person, that's where journaling comes in so usefully, to be able to at least say it to yourself. And then maybe you can get to the next step of reading it out loud. Definitely there's some powerful things associated with manifesting abundance and unblocking that throat chakra. Last one is your third eye, intuition. Unfortunately, this is where we have a lot of clients, or Victor has a lot of clients who keep going, please meditate, please meditate. Oh, it's so hard. I fall asleep. I can't do this. And there's no way around third eye. Do you think there's any way to avoid connecting your third eye if you don't sit in silence?
No, I mean, I was going to say no way around meditating. Well, you could sit in silence in the trees. That's
the same thing. Though.
Yeah.
So it's, I guess the one is, you might sit in silence and not reflect. So if you're sitting in silence and ignoring the thought, I mean, we don't want to hold attachment to the thoughts, but we do want them to be little sparks of insight or intuition. And so
there has to be a place. The third eye thrives on theta and alpha state brainwaves, and those don't happen until you relax long enough for like 15 to 30 minutes in meditation, in order for I call it epiphanies to come up. And they're not like, oh, what epiphany, but there are a lot of times just, wow, I didn't realize I had that subconscious belief.
It's hard for me to sit for 30 minutes, but it's the biggest breakthroughs is when I sit for 30 minutes.
And the other interesting thing is that the third eye is so key in the law of attraction. And the reason for this is specifically when you do meditation with visualization. Visualization is literally just using your imagination to conduct the desired outcome that you want your resolutions or goals to achieve. And if you can visualize something, your brain actually doesn't know the difference between visualizing something and reality. Your brain sees no separation. And so if you see this reality as real, then you create that energetic, positive energetic field, and then you manifest the reality to come in your awakened world.
Absolutely. One of the things though, I noticed so you have your pineal gland, and that's the source of intuition. And I noticed, it's very easy for that to be blocked. So you have trouble with, if you're sitting in silence, you're like, I still don't have this intuition coming to me. There's a chance that you need to just do some detox. And for me, I still can just keep joking because I absolutely love being able to go out Saturday night and have a glass of wine, but I did notice, I'm like, oh, alcohol can block your third eye. And so I did cut back on having a glass of wine at night, because I was like, you know what, I want to see if I feel, and it did notice like a huge difference. I mean, it's not like I'm going to say like, I'm never going to have a drink again. But I did stop for a long time because I'm just like, oh, I noticed these pineal blocks, and I really like, with the conjunction, I wanted to feel more of that opening. Fluoride is a huge one. So one of the things we're going to be adding to our Defy the Norm Tribe membership is a 30-day detox, where we, with lots of different ways to detox. Another one we've been doing is charcoal. Oh, so many things. I don't know.
Diatomaceous earth, bentonite clay. Don't ingest that.
We did. My favorite right now is charcoal lattes.
Charcoal. What else?
Really
good.
good.
Apple cider vinegar shots. Kombucha is a good probiotic. It's not as detoxifying.
Skin brushing. So there's a lot of things we'll be adding. That'll be another course. There's already 13 courses in our Defy the Norm Tribe that really are, they support all of these steps, all of this health, optimizing nutrition. We're building out ABU with how to help you with adventuring more. But there's already, the chakra healing is absolutely a really good place to start. And if you've already done that, then it's time to go to the next one with Project Life and figuring out where exactly your overlaps are in like block chakras and goal setting. And then we have Brainwave Mastery, which is taking it the highest level of trying to find this interconnectedness with source energy.
Yeah.
And
I think even if you are struggling maybe with just the third eye part or visualizing exactly what you want, maybe it has more to do with your health. Maybe you are at whatever you want to call it. There's not levels, but this fourth phase. Maybe you actually have to go back and look at your health, because the gut-brain axis is insanely correlated. In fact, we'll send you a resource to a book called The Gut-Brain Axis, because you can probably explain this better than I can.
Yeah, it's because of the number of nerves in your gut. And so when you have leaky gut, it's the receptors aren't making the connection. And so literally, like, you're just gonna have leaky brain in a way. Leaky gut ends up being leaky brain. And so how are you gonna find clarity when you're not making these connections? And on top of it, we're gonna really, one of the things that have been really powerful for us is that besides meditation and yoga, we've been doing activations. And you've probably heard me talk about this somewhere else, but you end up with like, even if it's a micro trauma, I mean, if it's a macro trauma, then that's even more so, but you end up with all these crystallizations in your nervous system. And so if you might paint and draw and do all these creative things, but if you're breaking up these crystallizations and releasing them, it makes it really hard to have this free-flowing energy. And so I'll eventually get to like creating some activations. Actually, on Project Life, I recorded one activation in there to as a starting point, but everything kind of builds on each other. So finding kind of your sticking point or where you're struggling. This is why, I mean, all the courses have everything. If you're a self-learner, you can probably put them together real quick. With coaching, it's real easy for me to see where people are maybe denying that one aspect, or blocking it, or
even
not
just
showing
like
up.
People know what they are, what it is, but they need someone literally just to lean on, almost somebody to help them literally uncover that, because it can be really intense, of course.
Absolutely, yeah. It really, yeah, it's hard to do it by yourself. I mean, I would definitely, if I didn't have these 6 people around me all the time, I probably could not have made the type of progress that I have made. And I have a long way to go, is I think. But isn't that the most beautiful thing, is like, once you have a growth mindset, you're always looking for the next one. And then as you look for it, they just show up on your doorstep, it seems like. So I think that kind of covered some really quick take homes. Where I would start, remember, is I definitely make sure you know your Enneagram, make sure you know your Myers-Briggs, and then try to look at it in reverse as far as like, okay, well, yeah, this is what I am. This is how I keep showing up. Yeah, this is my core desire, but what would that look like? What would my hero's journey look like? What would a win? What would the success look like by the end of the year? What feelings? What is it? Connection? Is there a sense of purpose I'm missing? Is it, what's that overriding feeling? Like, to me, I really hope by the end of 2021 that I can break through in this community feeling, right? Because I know that, like, oh, it's me denying this extroverted nature and this self-doubt that I always face is what makes it so that I don't show up consistently to create that community. And I keep it from a distance, but I never like put myself fully in it. And so for me, I go, oh, well, I could see, so my community, maybe this land Victor and I talk about, and sometimes they overlap. Maybe give yourself 2 or 3, because I would say also my other one would be like fully having some project that Victor and I completely embrace together that has to be new. Like he's not necessarily super passionate about this stuff. He likes it, but he's not, and I'm not super passionate about working out. But there's some merging in there. We are really passionate about raising kids that are happy, healthy, thriving. And so maybe somewhere in there, I don't know. But I know for me, one of the things I tell you to do in Project Life is to like write it out. I mean, I did this last year and I wrote out, oh, I'm in the Sawtooth and I just finished a hike and Victor's here with me and we're sitting having a beer, looking at the stars by a campfire. Well, I was there in that spot this year and it wasn't with Victor. It was just, well, another family was there. But it was it was like, oh, wow, I could manifest this part, but I can't manifest for somebody else. So sometimes it's a matter of looking at, that was a constraint. I put a constraint on somebody else's growth instead of looking at like, well, how can I achieve happiness in my, or maybe there's a different way to, maybe there's a feeling. I mean, I felt he was there though in Wyoming a couple weeks later, and we were camping under the stars in the tent. And that was like the first time for me to get Victor to tent camp with me. And he was like, this is so awesome. Like, finally, yes. Yeah,
that was really well said. And I think the initial tasks that you come up with, like I want to lose weight in 2021, the initial simple goals you have to start with, let those guide you, because those are where you should be. They're insight into what the emotion you're looking for. Because if you sit down and like, what emotion am I looking for? Sometimes it's confusing because it's like, that's really vague. So let the task guide you, and everything you said was pretty spot on.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us. I know you guys that are here are thriving and doing good, and I'm happy. I really reach out to me. Let's if you really want to have fun with this, send me your goals, or let's set up a Zoom and we can.
There's also, if you're interested, you and Dad are hosting True Health Formula on January 1st. January 1st, if you are interested in more about the details of what healthy and thriving in nutrition physically looks like.
Absolutely. It really is what we talked about today, but like as a little bit more simplistic version. It's more approachable because I know you guys here today are open-minded to expansion and abundance and ready, but for a lot of people, they have to take that first step. And sometimes if there's a gap in those first steps too, when you're seeking abundance, even if it's just at a detox level or an energetic field in like, not fitness so much for strength or for fitness for weight loss, but fitness for just vibrancy. Because the more we start moving our body in different ways and different exercises, Gabby and I, we almost always do handstands when we work out, because all of a sudden you invert yourself, your blood flows differently and you feel more playful and fun. And it's way better than just doing shoulder presses all the time. So, but looking at me, I'm like, ooh, I need to surf. I lost my shoulders. That's the show we got. All right. Thank you for joining us. We hope we inspired you and gave you some tangible and not too many steps to take. Bye, you guys.